Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll gain confidence, clarity, and a competitive edge in a crowded marketplace so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm going to talk about some of the findings from the latest WebAIM screen reader user survey. Stick around to get some really interesting insights about screen readers and screen reader users. Now, in case you don't know, in 2008, 2009 or so, WebAIM started conducting surveys of screen reader users about a variety of topics. Their screen readers and browsers of choice, how they get around a web page, their perceived state of accessibility of the web, issues they encounter on a web page, and more. Now, the latest survey is number 10, which just came out in February 2024. The survey had a little over 1,500 valid responses. These screen reader user surveys give us a lot of useful information. And I say useful because we can take this information and we can use these insights to perform better web accessibility testing and also to understand screen reader users better as well. Of course, just keep in mind this information is not representative of all screen reader users. This is just a sampling of about 1,500 or so. Almost half of the people in this latest survey were from North America, about 30% were from Europe, and the rest were from Asia, South America, Africa and the Middle East, Australia and Oceania, and Central America and the Caribbean. Most respondents were in the 21 to 40 or 41 to 60 age group. Now, that might be surprising to some people, especially if when you think about disabilities, if you associate them with only an older population. Almost 90% of respondents reported using a screen reader because of a disability. Now, that might surprise you too, that about 10% of screen reader users did not have a disability. Now, not surprisingly, most respondents who said they used a screen reader were people with blindness, which were at almost 77%. And then people with low vision or other visual impairments, that was about 20% of responses. People with deafness or other hearing loss, they were the next group at almost 7%. And then people with cognitive or learning disabilities at a little over 5%. And then other disabilities at almost 5%. And then motor disabilities at a little over 2%. The survey also asked about these users' preference of screen reader. In the past, JAWS had the highest percentage, and for the most part, JAWS use has declined over the years as the percentage of NVDA users went up, and this year they were actually very close. Okay, because almost 41% said that they used JAWS, and almost 38% said they used NVDA. And by the way, those are both Windows-based screen readers. And NVDA is free, and JAWS is paid, but has a free 40-minute mode. VoiceOver, which is for Mac, didn't even have 10%. WebAIM did also ask which screen reader they commonly use. Now, in those replies, NVDA was highest at almost 66%, and JAWS was at almost 61%. VoiceOver came in at almost 44%. Other responses were really small percentages, and some of those were Narrator, Orca, Zoom Text/Fusion, Dolphin Supernova, and Chrome Vox. Almost 72% of survey respondents said they use more than one screen reader, and 43% use 3 or more, and 17% use 4 or more. Well, what's interesting to note is that VoiceOver users also usually use another screen reader too. Respondents were also asked about their choice of web browser with their screen reader. Well, Chrome dominated at 52%, Microsoft Edge came in at 19%, and Firefox was at 16%. Safari, Internet Explorer, and other browsers came in much lower, but that's not surprising. The screen reader and browser combinations are especially important to note because these can guide any screen reader testing that you do. JAWS with Chrome was the highest combination at almost 25%, and NVDA with Chrome came in at a little over 21%. Not surprising though, about 86% of screen reader users are using Windows. Only about 10% use Mac, and 3% use Linux. A little over 91% of the respondents use a screen reader on a mobile device. And most of them, almost 71%, use Apple iPhone, iPad, or an iPod Touch. Android use was almost 28%. So that's a big difference there. And this is interesting because Windows is preferred on the computer, but for mobile, an Apple product is. The most popular mobile screen reader was VoiceOver at almost 71% and TalkBack at almost 35%. And again, that's interesting because VoiceOver was reported to be such a small stake on the computer. Safari was the most popular primary mobile web browser at a little over 58%. And Chrome came in at almost 28%. When they were asked their feelings about the accessibility of website content from the prior year, almost half said that they saw no change. Close to 20% said less accessible, and about 35% said more accessible. Then when asked if better assistive technology or more accessible websites would have a bigger impact on web accessibility, almost 86% said more accessible websites. Only 14% said better assistive technology. And again, this is very interesting because this just reinforces just how much accessibility on the web is needed. When the respondents were asked how often they contact a website owner to let them know they encountered an accessibility barrier, most people, 44% of them, said not very often. About 25% said somewhat often, and almost 22% said never, and only about 9% said very often. Okay, this is notable because the never and not very often folks amount to the majority, almost 2/3 of the respondents. So as I've said in the past, just because you or your client hasn't gotten a complaint from someone, it doesn't mean there are no accessibility issues. You just cannot expect someone to take time out of their busy day to contact them. That is if they can even find the information on the website to do that. And some people might just leave because they're pissed because, well, they feel like they were been alienated. So why should they bother? Because it seems like the business doesn't care. Okay, respondents were also asked about finding information on a long web page. What did they usually do first? Well, not surprising, almost 72% said that they used headings to navigate through the page content. And I talked about the importance of headings for accessibility in episode 164, so be sure to check that out. Now, the next most common response at almost 14% was searching the page. Reading through the page came in at a little over 6%. But reading through the entire page can be really time consuming to find what you need. About 5% said they used the hyperlinks on the page to navigate. And almost 4% said they used the landmarks and regions of a page. Now, respondents were also asked how useful heading levels are when navigating a page by headings. And in case you don't know, there are 6 levels of headings, and heading 1 is the topmost heading. Okay, more than half, 57%, said they find them very useful, and almost 32% said somewhat useful. Okay, that's 89% of respondents, so that's big. When survey respondents were asked what they thought were the most problematic items on a web page, CAPTCHA was by far the top complaint. No surprise there, though, because they are notoriously inaccessible. Okay, interactive elements like menus and dialog windows, and then ambiguous hyperlinks, maybe like a bunch of read mores or click here's, ambiguous hyperlinks and buttons, and then unexpected screen changes, those came in pretty close to one another after CAPTCHAs. Lack of keyboard accessibility, that was also listed as an issue, okay, as were missing or improper alt text, complex or difficult forms, missing or improper headings, too many links, complex data tables, inaccessible or missing search function, and no skip link. And I talked about skip links in another episode as well. So all of these insights provide us with helpful information about what to pay attention to when we prioritize the development or the remediation of a website. You can get all of the WebAIM 2024 Screen Reader User Report findings at webaim.org/project/screenreadersurvey10. And be sure to check out the episodes on mastering accessible headings and on skip links. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Download my free alt text made easy guide where you'll find out which images need alt text and which don't, how to write good alt text, who should write alt text, and much more. You can grab that at creative-boost.com/alt text.